So all my second lot of shadows are dry now, and I'm going to put over a further glaze. I'm going to mix up quite a strong glaze this time because I don't want it to fade and disappear. Now I'm going to have two. I'm going to have one with cadmium lemon and one with cadmium yellow pale. So I've got a puddle here now of cadmium lemon. I'm going to sweep right over those petals again. One is always hopeful that this is the last time, so if I can get away with just 3 glazes on a painting, then I'm happy. Lay that very gently over the top. Be very careful to match up all the same edges. I'm just going to put a touch of cadmium yellow pale on the underneath of this petal, and then cadmium yellow pale right over the top of the trumpet. This gives you just a little bit of a opportunity now to lift anything out if you think you've gone too dark. A little sweep here and there, a little bit of detail along the top here, some very strong cadmium yellow pale just to put this little crease in through here. You can use a tiny bit of this cadmium yellow pale just on the tip of your brush to just enhance the edge here and there. That should dry very quickly, but while it's drying off, I will start mixing the greens ready for the stem. I'm going to use Winsor Blue green shade and cadmium yellow pale that is. I'm going to have a puddle as well with slightly more blue in it, and I'm going to have a nice vibrant bright green using Winsor Blue green shade and cadmium lemon. Cadmium yellow pale, a little bit of cadmium red deep to make a sort of warm orangey colour, and then I'm going to add a touch of blue to that, and that's French ultramarine. So quite a lot of colours there, but we want them all ready to go so we don't have to stop. So what I'll do is put a glaze of water down the stem, hold your brush sharp underneath there so you get a nice join or edge to edge, and just drag some of that water down there. Now don't take it all the way up to the edge because the chances are you'll overspill. You just want to take a small run right down the centre. I'm going to put the bright green on around the base of the sepal here, and then the brown, orangey brown I suppose it is there, then a tiny bit of the bright green right at the top left hand side here, and more brown at the top here. Now we'll sort out who's in front of who in just a minute because the sepal's sort of wrapping over at the top there. We'll come back to that. Just lift a tiny bit of light just to remind me where the join is, and just very gently sweep those two together. Use the medium green at the top here. Now go very slowly down the stem. You want a nice straight stem, and then without cleaning the brush just pick up the slightly bluer mix as you go further down. So bring the paint with you and keep those edges nice and sharp. When we get to the bottom, I'm just going to glaze that away with some water. So that's fairly pale down the middle because the water's kept the light out of that. While that's settling, I use this brown. Right at the top here it's dry, so we can just paint on that very fine edge at the top of the sort of dry papery end of the sepal, and then wiggle in these very fine creases, sort of slightly wiggly lines here. That's where it gets all crumpled at the top. This is what would have covered the flower before it opened, so it's now been pushed down below the flower and it's got all sort of screwed up. Just going to add a touch more French ultramarine to that just to make it a bit darker. You have a combination of different browns and oranges to create the depth of colour at the top here. And because you're only putting small amounts of paint hither and thither, it dries very quickly, so as long as you keep moving around different areas of it, you shouldn't overwork any area. Just put a few more little creases down here and drop some of that mid-green through the middle, a little bit of the bright green either side. Just soften that away until you're ready to put another glaze on. So we'll let that settle and carry straight on to this leaf over here. So glaze right over the top of that. And they're lovely daffodil leaves because they have this very gentle twist where they change direction. So we'll just take that to where it twists off. I'm going to add a watery mix of that bluey green and then go for the mid green on this side. Very soft at this stage. We'll mix up a darker green in a minute, but I just want to get that nice bright bluey top to it. Be careful with your tips of your leaves here because they're not pointed, they've got a very gentle soft end to them. And we'll leave that to dry and come back and put the darker colour on in a minute. So while that's drying, I'll map in the other leaves. So that first glaze has dried on the leaves and the stem, and what I've done is I've removed all the pencil, and now what we're going to do is put some darker colours on. So I'm going to start mixing using French ultramarine as my base, and cadmium yellow, and Windsor blue green shade. We'll run the water down the middle. Got a nice fine stem here, so just be careful to go straight through the centre. And I pick up that colour just on the tip of the brush, don't fill the whole brush. And I'm going to put it down this side. Quite a strong colour. Now this time I'm going to run the colour down one side of the stem, take all the water out of the brush, and then smooth on the highlighted side. And then down the very fine side on the right. Now I can see that's drying just a little bit too blue, so I'm going to add more of the cadmium yellow pale. And just while that's settling, just run a fine line of that more yellow colour right on top. And just repeat that process. Keep an eye on this base here because you don't want to get that all looking a bit messy, so we just soften that away with water. A little bit more light there, and when you're happy with that, leave that to dry, and we'll come back to that in a minute and see how that's looking. We're going to use the same colour and put the darker bits of the leaf on. You have to glaze the leaf first so we get a nice soft break between the two, and just a simple water glaze. Make sure it's not too puddly, you only want a little bit. Just hoover up the excess water so that it doesn't go everywhere. Let it settle for a minute, pick up the dark green and just be very careful and put it just to one side of that highlight. Probably take 2 glazes of this, but we'll just get the shape right first. Just run that down where it disappears. We've got to put the back of this leaf on yet, but I just want to get this top bit on first. And then clean damp brush, very gently soften that edge. Add a little bit of cadmium yellow pale to half of that colour. Just make it a bit brighter on this edge. You have to work fairly quickly if you're going to put both of these colours on at more or less the same time. And a little bit of an edge along here. So clean damp brush, catch that edge and soften this one. As long as that's all drying nice and gently, we can jump over and fill in the other leaves. So those first glazes have dried now on the leaves, and what I'm going to do is just add a little bit more detail and a bit more depth. I'm going to mix up a darker mix of the green, so the same 3 colours, French ultramarine, Windsor blue green shade and cadmium yellow pale, heavy on the French ultramarine. I'm going to just put on some of the very fine veining. It's very subtle. I'm going to use this colour now just to put on a few sharper details right at the top of the sepal. Get it a really nice point on your brush, and you're literally drawing with the tip of your brush now. Just the odd little line there to indicate the edge of the petal as it's curving into the trumpet there. A little bit more shadow in that corner, and some further little wiggles for the creases going this way. Then I'm going to use this very pale green, watered right the way down, just to put on some very fine veining into the petals. And just a little bit darker down here. I think I've been a bit timid down here, so a bit darker where the stem gets tucked between the leaves. And so that's the study of the Narcissi complete. So do have a go with the techniques that I've shown you, and maybe add some more flowers and just have fun painting.
Now available to buy. Try these techniques at home whenever you wish. The extended DVD of today's workshop and the book that accompanies this series are now available from the Painting and Drawing channel. For further information and to order your copy, go to www.paintingdrawingchannel.com.